Welcome to Last First Date Radio, featuring interviews with experts in dating, relating, and mating in midlife. And now, here's your host, Sandy Weiner.
This is episode number 430 with Kim Chestney, tapping into your intuition in dating. Hi, everybody. I'm Sandy Weiner, and welcome back to Last First Date Radio, where we believe that a woman of value naturally attracts the respect and rewards she deserves in life and love. I believe in the value of tapping into that inner core so much that I wrote a book about it, and it's called Becoming a Woman of Value, How to Thrive in Life and Love. And it's filled with 30 tips and exercises to help you step more fully into your value and your core confidence. It's available now on Amazon for Kindle or paperback. And this week's tip for becoming a woman of value is from the book, and it's know when to say yes. We often get our yeses and nos confused. We don't trust our yeses, and sometimes saying yes is a really important part of our personal growth. We need to say yes to step into a bigger space for ourselves, to really expand who we are. And so I challenge you this week to say yes to something really scary, something that takes a certain amount of courage, and be brave and say yes. And before I bring Kim on, I just want to give a shout out to my Facebook group. It's called Your Last First Date, and it is a fantastic place for any woman who is over 40, who is dating or in a relationship and wants to really work on personal growth. This is not a place to come and complain and be a victim. This is a place to grow. So if you're interested in a dynamic, fabulous group, come and join us at Your Last First Date. And now for my guest, Kim. She is the author of Radical Intuition, which was just released, and she's a globally recognized innovation leader and the founder of Intuition Lab. Her work has been featured or supported by leading edge organizations, including South by Southwest Interactive, the Carnegie Mellon University, Comcast, and Hewlett-Packard. Very impressive, Kim. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Sandy. It's great to be here.
Well, thank you. So how did you get involved in this whole intuition business?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question I get a lot, seeing is, I have this tech background. I've worked for 20 years in innovation and technology, and everybody's like, wait a second, like, how does that connect with intuition? But, my journey was a little non-intuitive, but underneath it all, there's always been this common thread of really intuitive thinking. I'm an artist. I graduated from college with a degree in oil painting. So I really didn't have my sights set on a career in innovation. But what I didn't realize at the time is that, there was this sort of bubbling trend that's been happening over the last 20 years where intuition and creativity and all this other stuff, that also the rich, beautiful things from like this other side of our brain that we're not used to using, is really starting to come to the forefront in our culture and in our lives. We've gotten to this point where we're sort of at the limits of our mind, moving into a sort of post-information society. And that's the time when all of this beautiful intuition stuff is going to be more valuable than ever. So that launched my career in innovation and working with tech companies that were looking for intuition and looking for ways to innovate and create new pathways that had never existed before. So all of that's the domain of this kind of new kind of intuition, that it's still touched into those really deep core, like in deep mystical parts of us, but it's also really, really practical and applies to daily life.
It's so interesting that you moved from having a fine arts degree to tech, to coming back to how we are creative in our brains, because we only access, the left side of our brain, the left hemisphere.
Which side?
Right. Well, I'm teaching a course right now to high school students on how to access the right side of the brain in their creativity, and how to see and how to draw. And Wonderful. If you're watching the video, all the artwork behind me is work that I've done. So awesome. I was an art major in school too.
See, and then we have something in common.
Yes. And so intuition has always been an important part of all of our lives. But I so agree with you. I think we have it, but we don't always know how to tap into it, and we don't always value it. So let's get into it. What is radical intuition? And why do we need to know about it?
Yeah, radical intuition. So I realized early on that people were really confused about what intuition was, because as I was doing all this work, I'm talking about intuition, and everybody like looked at me differently. Some people were like, "Oh, that's something spooky or fringe or strange," and or other people said it didn't exist, and other people just thought, "Oh, maybe it's just a gut feeling, or maybe it's just something like psychic powers." I realized nobody had this really comprehensive understanding of what intuition really was. Like, what is it? Like, what's happening? Like, anybody who's experienced intuition knows that it's real. And once it happens to you, it's one of those things you have to experience it. You can't like read about it to really believe it. You have to have it happen to you. And when it does, it shows you that there's so much more that we don't understand about the world that we live in, this sort of linear mind-made reality, that there's something beyond that touches us and allows us to do impossible things and know impossible things, and that they're not so impossible after all. They're actually quite normal and part of our innate makeup. So, this journey has sort of led me to, have a mission to normalize intuition, I think was part of it. I really wanted to make intuition accessible to everyone so that people kind of got away from these stereotypes. We can put away the crystal balls and the tarot cards. I mean, that's fine. Then there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not how we have to use our intuition. We use it every day when we're going to work, or whether we're creating our business or parenting our children or having relationships. There's so many different areas that our intuition can help us. So, I started this school called Intuition Lab in 2017, where our goal was kind of to hack intuition. We went in and we experimented and we researched it and we tried all these different things to see how far we could push this, this sort of the boundaries of the mind. And it's been really exciting to see the things that have unfolded. And that was sort of how radical intuition came about. It's the collection of all the knowledge and wisdom that we've accumulated from working with it for so long.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
There is a lot of confusion. I'm reading a book right now that deals with these children who go to a fortune teller when they're young, and the fortune teller tells them when they're going to die. And it's a fascinating story, because knowing the day of your death, or what somebody tells you is the day of your death, is that something that's going to come true? Is it something that you make come true? Is it something that you live your life differently knowing those things? And it's just made me think a lot about the power of suggestion, and how many of us live our lives without any idea about the fact that life is limited and we don't take advantage of day to day. But
and I think I just want to jump in, because I think it's really funny that you brought up this idea of the fortune teller, because the fortune teller is actually one of the things that a similar situation set me on my path. And it's one of my favorite stories to tell. When I was in college, I was living in England, and there was every fall they have something called the Hall Fair, and it travels around. It's like a traveling carnival, kind of like Something Wicked This Way Comes, where they have the fortune tellers and the rides and the old timey food for England. And this is like the oldest traveling carnival in the world. It's been going on since like the 1400s or something. So we went with my friends, and we just thought, oh, it'll be really cool. And of course we got there and we saw this gypsy in a caravan. And she was this beautiful woman. She was very young. I bet she was probably in her 20s or early 30s at the time. Long, beautiful hair. $5 she was going to read our palms. So we're like, okay, let's do this. Why not? This looks fun. So I went in, and she full of the, like we were saying, crystal balls, tarot cards, all the accoutrement of the gypsy and the psychics. And she read my palm, and she told me all this stuff. And then one of the things she said that in 1994, because this was a long time ago, and it was probably like 1991 at the time, I think, I see you in a foreign courtroom, and it's going to be so stressful for you, but you're going to be doing a good thing. So hang in there. And I remember what we walked away, we're like, well, that was really specific. Like, how odd, right? Like, I mean, that was a date. Like, who does that, right? So I went home, I wrote it in my journal, I dated it, I had everybody witness it. So we're going to see what happens in 1994. And I did. I'm not going to even pretend like I forgot about it, because I was curious, but it wasn't in the front of my mind. It was something that I was curious of, but I will never, never, never forget the moment in 1993 when it wasn't on my mind yet, when I opened my mailbox and saw a summons for jury duty. And as I took that in my hand, I was overwhelmed with this intuitive knowing that I was going to be on that jury. And I sat there and I just knew it. Like, it was like this flash that was before me. that just totally validated this experience I had had years earlier in a whole nother part of the world. And I knew it. And I went up and I told my roommate, I said, I just called for jury duty to get ready. I'm going to get picked for this jury. And I went in, I sat down, and I knew they were going to pick me, and they picked me. And then I ended up going, it was a federal case, and we were sequestered, and there was like all this craziness around it. And sure enough, it came into fruition in 1994.
Wow.
So, where the place that it left me, right? Because you have that experience, like I'm sure the children did in your story, of how do I make sense of that, right? Because at the time I wasn't into this kind of thing. It wasn't something that I was just, I wasn't living in this woo place. I just had to reconcile in my head the fact that people could see the future. Like there was some way for it to happen. Like I didn't know how she did it, but it was possible. So, it kind of started this journey for me of really trying to, instead of being afraid of it and calling it something scary or a cult, or she's speaking to spirits, that maybe there's a way that we could all do this. If she could do it, why couldn't I do it? And maybe it's something normal that we're able to do, and some people just are more open to it. So that's sort of many, many years ago, started to fuel this fire as one of the very early validations that I had that this is actually true.
So fascinating. Well, when we talk about dating intuition and relationship intuition, one of the things that I struggle with, or that my clients struggle with really, is knowing the difference between intuition and fear. And often people will say, yeah, I have a gut feeling he's terrible. And just like, and it's because he reminds her of someone from her past, or she's never really done the work. So anybody who's a lawyer is going to remind her of that lawyer she dated. And so all lawyers are horrible. Oh my God, I got to get out of here. So I guess there's a little bit of intuition at play, but it's the fear of not, of what happened before. And so they're not really seeing this person. So if you can kind of elaborate on that a little bit, because I think this is really a sticking point in dating.
It really is. And I agree with you 100%. And I think that the key is, and why it's so important for us in relationships to be in tune with our intuition, is because intuition is not informed by our conditioning or by our or conditionings from the people around us or from our past experience. So think about it in terms of, like you just said, like if I've been hurt by someone, or if I've been told that certain types of people are bad or good or whatever, intuition doesn't have anything to do with that, right? So that's your fears. That's your response to your life experience and your ego experience. Ultimately, those are ego experiences. So intuition comes from a place of non-ego. It's complete truth. It's pure truth. So, there is no reason to have fear when there's real intuition, because it simply is. It's not something that's going to come to you as an emotion. I mean, you can feel it. You have a sense. I always call it like, when people say like your intuition's your heart and follow your heart. Well, it's only your heart to a degree. It's not your feelings. It's not all these emotions. It's emotive. Like it guides you, and it pulls you, and it calls you, and it allows you to align, and it resonates with you. But it's not something like a fear or a passionate love or need, right? So it's not based on in here. It's based on like the higher truth above. So I always say, follow your higher heart. Don't just follow your heart, just follow your higher heart, that truth within you. So when you're meeting someone new, it's really important because there is something really valuable though to first impressions. So you can get a first impression because intuition is all about first impressions. They say first impressions never lie, and that's your intuition. That's that intuition that, like, your intuition might recognize something in that person that is bad, no matter what they are, whether a lawyer or they're just a regular old person. Your intuition might see something about them that you don't. So even if you can't rationalize that, it's important to really listen and honor your first impressions, but also to distinguish them from that conditioning that may cause you to have like a predisposition or to have sort of a traumatic reaction where you protect yourself and start doing things that are resulting from your wounds and your conditioning.
Yeah, that's a good explanation. I think, that recently I met somebody and the energy was so repulsive to me immediately upon meeting him. I just was like, I have to leave. That I stayed for a half an hour, 45 minutes, but it was so clear to me that we are just not a good energetic fit. And That's very different from, the fear-based decision to just run away from somebody.
Right.
And every time we ignore intuition, I always say, I've made the worst decisions when I've pushed those intuitive feelings down. It's, the bad job that you take, the bad relationship that you're in, they're all based on not listening to intuition. And so I think if people can look back and say, well, where have I ignored my intuition? And that comes up all the time in dating coaching. Well, can we trace back how this relationship started to fall apart? And often they think, oh, nothing happened until this one thing. But if they look back, they can see, oh, that first time that he totally ignored my needs, that he was just being selfish. And but I thought maybe I'm too needy. So we have to pay attention to those things. And I just want to say, I just got off being interviewed for a podcast about grief. And I had lost my first child 29 years ago. And when he was born, I found I had medical intuition. I had no idea where it came from, but I knew that the diagnosis he had was wrong. I knew when doctors were wrong for him. I knew which doctors to choose for which surgery. And I'm sure many people can relate to this, where suddenly you have this knowledge and this ability that you didn't know you had before, and you learn to trust it and a lot of people unfortunately don't trust it, but learning to speak up to people in power, because intuitively, this doesn't feel right. This, like a lot of times with gurus, these people who, tout themselves as some knowledgeable guru, and everybody's following, and you wait a minute, something doesn't feel right, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you really have to just look within yourself for that. And then that's one of the things that I always say, famous last words were, I ignored my intuition. I mean, like, how many things have gone wrong after that, right? And it's kind of an art. It takes time to really trust your intuition. And I think we ignore it for different reasons. Some people don't trust it. Some people are just afraid. There's a fear of trust, like, oh, like, I don't really want to do this, or this might cause me pain if I listen to this voice, and it's a risk. But I mean, part of the beauty of intuition is that even if we do make those wrong choices, and you can tell when you're not aligned with your intuition, you get into those places and those relationships that are blocked. They feel like ruts. There's low energy. That's the path that not being aligned with our intuition takes us to. But the good thing about intuition is it's always there. It never goes away. It's always got that helping hand out there to redirect us. So even if we go down the wrong path, even if we have those bad relationships and we go through those dark times, our intuition will allow them to teach us and to pull us ultimately back into alignment with where we're supposed to be. So I really look at it as like, we can learn the hard way through our experiences, or we can just learn the easy way and trust our intuition, because it comes down to, it's that simple. Either way, we're going to learn and grow, but we can go the hard way or we can go the easy way. And if we trust our intuition wants us to get to that place. And it's like that light that's showing us the way. We'll get there one way or the other. Just one way hurts a little less.
Right. So you keep talking about alignment, and I think alignment is really important. I think a lot of people don't know what alignment feels like or looks like, or they have this kind of amorphous being because maybe they're codependent and they're so used to shape-shifting to fit into other people's lives that they have learned to kind of disassociate. So for people who struggle with alignment, do you have any tips to help people align with who they are, not who they are in response to other people?
Yeah. And I totally can relate, because, I went through periods of my own life where I wasn't aligned, when I was really trying to bring this work together. And, sometimes it was frustrating, and sometimes I was, kind of going in the wrong direction with it. And so I can relate to how that feels. And, I think, my advice is to, is to really just stay open to the possibility. The possibility that there's something that you're not seeing. Because for me, in all those times when I thought that, like, oh, my life was going in the wrong, like for an example, like I've always wanted to do the work that I'm doing now, but there was a time when I was, working in the arts and doing creative stuff, and I was younger, and I didn't know how to make the shift, and I didn't realize at the time that I was learning so many valuable skills then that was going to inform what I'm doing now. But at the time, it didn't feel like that. It felt a lot more oppressive than that. So even when we're in relationships, we might feel like, okay, this isn't the easiest relationship, but if I'm still learning something about myself, if I'm growing and evolving and changing, then at least I'm on that path. So, give yourself permission to take time and work through it, and allow your intuition to keep nudging you back on track. Because really that feeling of alignment is our happiness. That's our happy place, because it feels good. It feels good to be who we are. And I always say that authenticity is the measure of our intuitive awakening. When we can be authentic, when we can be who we are with every person in our life and not feel like we have to shape shift and be these different people for like our boyfriend or our partner or for our parents and for our coworkers, that kind of authenticity is a really good sign that we're living our truth and that we're being true to ourselves. And intuition is all about being true to ourselves. I had this quote go viral a couple of weeks ago that I posted from the new book. I said, to be true to yourself is the most revolutionary act. And that really hits a lot of nerves right now, I think, with what's happening around us in our society and with the election and with everything that's going on. But it was really, it hit this nerve, I think, for so many people, because it's so difficult to live our truth and to know the truth in the world today. So making that shift towards listening to what's coming from within us, to those feelings, those thoughts, those are our core truth. And it's hard to be true to that. It really is. We have to be strong and have courage and believe in ourselves. And it takes time to get to that point. So be patient and you'll get there step by step.
Yeah, that's and that's a great answer. I think that so many of us just don't trust.
Mm-hmm.
We don't, like the other day I had a woman come to me and she has trust issues with her boyfriend. And after speaking to her for 10 minutes, I said, you have trust issues with yourself.
Exactly.
You really don't trust yourself. And when you start to trust yourself, you'll stop second guessing. You'll stop suppressing what's important to say. And you'll be able to say, hey, you know what, this isn't working for me. I just don't trust where you're going with this. And what most people do is they focus on the other person and they ask them, what are you going to do? And I'm like, no, don't give all your power away. You get to decide too. Exactly. And it does take time. I mean, I certainly have evolved since my marriage and divorce, and not trusting my intuition when I got married, but trusting it so wholeheartedly when I got divorced.
Yes.
And when right. And then switching careers from being an artist to being a coach was still creative, but everything led me to here. Yes. And I think that if we can take those breadcrumbs and see how they all connect, everything had a purpose. It just may have been painful for a while, or we may not have seen it. And so for people who struggle with staying safe in dating and relationships, and this is a lot of people who come to me and say, I was blindsided, I didn't realize. So whether it's emotional safety or physical safety, how can people tap into their intuition?
Well, and I mean, this is a serious subject, and this is really touches the core of intuition, because there are few applications that are more important than this part of intuition. Intuition is, you call it your spidey senses, whatever it is, your so sneaking suspicions, whatever it is with intuition, it is here to protect you. It is here to guide you and to protect you and alert you to danger. It is an innate danger function of alert for us. So I like to tell the story of, in the book, I interviewed a woman named Jessica who tells her story. She lived in Washington, D.C. and she was a barista, and she was walking home. It was like midnight one night, and she saw a man like walking behind her, and they were on the streets. There were still some people around, but she noticed a guy walking like a few blocks behind her. She just had this weird feeling. She saw a police car up ahead, and she just had this thought that she should just go to the police car and just ask for a ride home instead of walking home in the darkness. And that was the thought that popped into her head. And she thought, and then she started to like second guess herself. And she's like, that's silly. He's going to think I'm nuts if I do that. Like, and then she starts reminding her like, oh, I take boxing lessons. I'm young, I'm healthy. If anybody jumps me, I can take care of myself. And then she said to herself, the universe will protect me. I'll be fine. I'm not worried about it. So sure enough, she keeps walking. She turns down a side street, and a few minutes later, she was attacked physically, very brutally. And it was a bad attack from what I understand. But fortunately, a neighbor heard and intervened, and she did not lose her life. But when I talked with her about it, we had this discussion about it's important. This whole thing talks about intuition in two ways. Was first of all, she knew it. There was a part of herself that said, oh, I didn't have to experience this. It told me to go and do this, to try. And she didn't realize when she said, oh, the universe is protecting me. Well, the universe was already protecting her. That's what her intuition was doing. And she disregarded it, So that's the key. Those moments when we say, oh, the universe will protect us. Well, what do you think that was trying to do when it told you to get in the car? It was trying to protect her. But we rationalize it. We let our mind talk us out of these things. And it's the same with relationships. We might just have a bad feeling about someone, but they look good on paper and they have money and they're good looking or something. And we talk ourselves out of these feelings and get ourselves into these situations that are so difficult. And the other thing that I love about that story is that if you play it through the other way, if she had gone and gotten into that car and taken that ride with that police officer, she would have never known the danger that she averted. Right. And that's the tricky thing about intuition, right? Is she never would have got validation. She still might have gone the rest of her life thinking she was crazy for doing that. So that's where trust comes in, and why it's so important to trust ourselves. And when we have those feelings about someone, not worrying that we're crazy or that we're making something up, but really being true to ourselves and putting ourselves first and being like, I don't feel comfortable with someone, and I'm not going to let anybody take away my sovereignty. I'm not going to let anybody make me not be true to myself. So no matter what stage, whether it's just meeting someone or whether you're deep in a relationship with someone who doesn't accept you for who you are or won't let you shine your true light, I mean, you have a duty to shine that light. And anyone who is taking that away from you, that's when you got to listen to that call of intuition. And no matter how hard it hurts, you need to get out there, because you'll be so glad you did once you get free.
I so agree with that. It's and so many people struggle with this. I mean, I would say every call I get is somebody who really knows the answer. They know the answer deep within, and they're stuck, and they are allowing people to control their lives and to diminish them. And it really is a disservice to ourselves and to others to ignore the light within us and to tamp it down. I never saw that until I got divorced, really. It was like I had this whole rebirth of like, whoa, this is all that's possible.
Right. When and you're like, you come alive, right? You just come alive inside again. It's wonderful.
Yeah. So a lot of people do struggle with tapping into intuition. And I've done like art workshops where I've done what I call process painting, where people just kind of go with the flow and flow to meditative music. I do guided meditations. I haven't done these in a long time, but many people just struggle. What would you suggest to help them tune in?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. And, the same with me. I talk to a lot of people like, I know I have intuition. I'm just not good at it. And I can't rely on it. And so, so the first thing I say is, yes, everybody has it. Every single person has it. So even if you're out there thinking, I'm not intuitive, you just haven't tapped into it yet. And there's really easy ways to do that if you have that kind of calling inside you to do so. So the first thing is to know you have it. And the second thing is to know that you can develop it and it can get better. And the more that you practice, the more attention you give it. I say, energy goes where the attention flows. The more the energy you give it, the better and stronger it becomes. So knowing that this is a step-by-step journey, and you can start wherever you are, like never used intuition, don't know anything about it, you can take that first step. Or even if you know a lot about intuition and you want to get better, just paying attention to it and working it will help you get to the next level with it and amplify you're in signal, it's like you're like an antenna, and we have to figure out how to turn that on and start getting that signal. So the most important thing, the most important thing as you start on this journey is to create more white space in your life. Most of the people who can't hear their intuition can't hear them because they're busy. They're always on their technology. They've got a million things to do. They have so much responsibility in life. There's so much noise in their life that their intuition can't get through. We have to create some quiet. We have to create some open space, because intuition is easy. All we have to do is receive it. That's all we got to do. We got to open up space so we can receive it. It's much easier than thinking. Thinking, we got to figure things out. We got to be rational. We got to deduct. We got to do all that stuff. Intuition, all we have to do is open up and receive it. So it's wonderfully easy, but it's also so hard because we're so busy and so overwhelmed in life that creating that space can be next to impossible. So the first thing I say is to make space with yourself, time with yourself, whether it's just going for a walk or meditating or taking a bath or taking a drive in the car, whatever it is you love to do with yourself alone, do a little more of that. Open up to those times where you can just have some quiet, where you're open to new ideas and insights, because that's the playground of your intuition. And once you open that up, then, like in the book, I talk about a lot of practices you can do to start to work with your intuition and understand it and get really kind of deep with it. But the very first steps is really just slowing down and making space for your intuition to come through.
That's sage advice, because we are in a crazy busy world.
Yes,
and
we
busy is like a badge of like, I'm so busy, I'm amazing. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, no, it's not so amazing. And that's why people have shower moments, where the best ideas, I've had ideas for courses come to me in the shower or on a walk. It's like we have to give ourselves that time. And I've had, most of my clients come in just operating from the neck up, and it's all in the head and academia and success. And one of the things I remember doing with a woman who really never tapped into intuition at all was to go through her day with the just asking herself if her choices were out of love or fear. And just being so much more mindful, like, what are you eating? Is it a choice made out of love or fear? When I'm turning my car to the left, am I doing it because out of love or fear? Every choice we make can be more intentional. And when we realize that we're doing it because, let's say, we eat healthy food because we love our body rather than we fear fat, there's a very different way that our brain starts to work. And that was a real game changer for her, and just to be mindful. I'm sure your book has tons of great ideas.
Yeah, well, intuition really is ultimately that connection with love, because intuition is that connection to truth and our source and God, whatever word you use for the universe that is at the heart of all of us, and that connection is ultimately love. So aligning with love is the same as aligning with your intuition, because intuition is also the opposite of fear. Intuition and fear cannot coexist. Where there is fear, there will never be intuition. So if you want to hear your intuition, we've got to be brave. We've got to put those fears away. We've got to step into the stillness and our power and trust, right? Even if we can't trust in ourselves, we trust in our higher selves and to guide us forward. But it really is seems to be in life. There is that dichotomy and that test of whether we're going to go the path of fear or whether we're going to go this path of unity and connection and life,
Yeah. Love it. So how can people use their intuition to go on their last first date?
Well, that's good that you said that, because I recently did that. Well, actually, I have a really funny story about my last first date. Because I went through a divorce, and it was just a time in my life that I had outgrown, and I knew that there was something I was being called to. And I met my husband. Well, I first saw my husband on a freeway. He was on a motorcycle and he pulled in front of me, and I immediately just noticed him. Like, again, like you wouldn't know it was your intuition. At the time, I didn't know it was my intuition. I just noticed him, because intuition is all about attention. So if you're wondering about why your attention is like drawn to the clock at 11:11 every day, or 2:22 every day, you hear people talking about stuff and little God winks like that, that's your intuition drawing your attention. So your intuition will draw your attention to things that you're supposed to notice that will bring you sort of meaningful coincidences and understanding. So I was just had my attention drawn to him. And it turns out I followed him. He ends up going right into my parking lot at work, right to my building where I was working. And I was just like, what is happening? And my intuition was just like, just taking over. And sure enough, 2 years later, we were married. And it was really just, this awareness. So being open, first of all, to cosmic signs, I have to say, it can be a really exciting thing, because the universe speaks to us from the outside too. All of those little things, those coincidences, those God winks, those things that line up, those are a reflection of our inner alignment. So being open to those in a meaningful way it can be a really fun way of looking at your intuition. But then ultimately not being afraid, when those opportunities come, not being afraid to follow your higher heart and to put yourself out there, especially after you've been hurt, or especially because the world can be a terrible, painful, scary place. And we can't let that break us. That's the most important thing, especially when we're getting out and we're just like we were saying earlier, starting to feel alive again. And we just want to get out there and live and really trust ourselves. And I think as we get older, that's easier, because now we feel like, okay, I know a little bit more of who I am. And it's easier for me to connect with that inner power than when I was in my 20s and I was still letting everybody tell me who I was, So, keep standing in your truth and loving yourself. And, I think your intuition will naturally lead you to a partner that reflects that same self-love.
Great. I love it. And congratulations on
Thank
finding
you.
Motorcycle Man.
That's right.
It's such a great story and inspirational to anybody who's feeling like it's not going to happen for me. It definitely can happen. And you might have been missing signs all along. So pay attention.
Exactly. Look for those signs.
Yes. Well, this has been such a great conversation, Kim. Can you tell our audience how to find you?
Yeah, you can get my book, Radical Intuition, anywhere online or on my website, kimchestney.com. And I also have a free Wake Up Your Intuition guide there. It's a little ebook. It's 12 pages. So if you want to start checking that out, you can just download that. And I also have a 10-day summit there where we've brought together a whole bunch of really cool people from all around the world to talk about intuition and how it manifests in all different kinds of ways in our life, and how you guys can use that in your own life. So there's a lot of smart people other than just like us talking about intuition, lots of perspectives. And so that's something fun to check out. And you can check that out at intuitionrevolution.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on the show and inspiring my listeners.
Yay,
and
thanks for having me.
More intuition, everybody. So
That's
I hope you take away, go pay attention to those little signs. They are not coincidences. And if you love our show, please rate and review us. It means so much to the continued success of our show. And we hope you go on your last first date very soon.